I am here with Senator Paul of Kentucky, the Republican who's been pushing hard for the Senate to start debating some of these issues. You've got this big meeting at the White House. What are your own expectations? How important is this meeting to you?
Well, you know, we've been filibustering for a week saying, let's talk about the debt ceiling. Still, we haven't had 1 minute of hearings, 1 minute of floor debate, and no proposal from the Democrats. So today we will propose to raise the debt ceiling contingent upon significant cuts, statutory caps, and a balanced budget amendment. I think that's the only hope we have as a country to reform this budget, is to force them to balance the budget by law.
You know Democrats are going to respond to that. Listen, these negotiations with the president, the administration's offering major spending cuts. They're offering some entitlement program changes, but in return, they want to see some increase in revenues, some willingness from Republicans to meet them, compromise on the issue of tax revenues. Can that happen?
Well, you know, we've already voted. We voted 2 weeks ago to get rid of the ethanol credit. So there is a willingness on our side to talk about unreasonable credits or deductions, but it should be part of overall reform. We should lower tax rates. You know, when Reagan lowered rates is when we got over 6% growth. That's what our economy needs. Revenue is down because the economy is struggling. If we want jobs, we want the economy to grow, we'd have to lower rates. Just getting rid of deductions won't spur the economy. In fact, may make the economy worse.
Well, the suggestion has been that perhaps the president, Speaker Boehner, talked about exactly that sort of agreement in their meeting on Sunday. Perhaps you lower overall rates, the corporate rates for sure. That's been part of the discussion. Maybe individual rates in exchange for getting rid of some of those deductions. That is something on paper you'd be willing to consider?
If you lower rates, I have no problem with getting rid of some deductions, but you have to lower rates as part of that deal. The other thing, though, is they say, oh, well, we've given you all these spending cuts. Most of these spending cuts are promises over the next 10 years. So they're going to raise the debt ceiling $2 trillion, and then they're going to cut $2 trillion over 10 years. The problem is we can't promise what the next Congress will do. And Congress doesn't have a very good history of being trustworthy. Most of the time, pay-as-you-go, Graham-Rudman-Hollins, they haven't adhered to their own rules. So my concern is, unless you have something binding, like the Constitution, like a balanced budget amendment, I'd like them to explain why we can't have a balanced budget amendment. 75% of the American people are for it. Why can't we pass it?
Even your Republican colleague, Senator McCain, was on the floor yesterday. A supporter of a balanced budget amendment said, listen, my Republican colleagues, we're never going to get the votes for this. It's not in the cards, is it?
I'm not willing to give up yet. We have all 47 Republicans in the Senate on board, and there are still several Democrats who say they would support a balanced budget. We won't know unless we try, but the American people didn't elect me just to come up and be a rubber stamp for raising the debt ceiling. It's just giving more money to people who have not been trustworthy with how they're spending it.
What is your message to folks in the markets who are watching this, not only here in the bond market in the U.S., but around the world right now, who are worried about this August 2nd deadline? They still hear you two, the two sides talking past each other. They are worried about default.
Take it off the table. The president should today announce that he will pay the interest on our bonds. He can do it. We bring in $200 billion a month in revenue. Our interest payment's about $20 billion. There is no reason the United States should ever default. I think this is a false paradigm. This is an either-or situation that really isn't true or honest. The president has the ability to always pay our interest. We have plenty of tax revenue. They should take it off the table.
But the administration says even if they could do that, prioritize those payments, you'd still have economic cataclysm in this country, and you'd have the government cuts payment to soldiers out in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Fact, we have a bill that we will introduce and have introduced previously that tells the president he should pay interest as a priority, Social Security as a priority, and soldiers' salaries as a priority. But then we would have to be real legislators, and we would have to say, you know what, we don't have enough money for everything we're spending up here, and we would have to cut. But that's what we're supposed to be doing, cutting out wasteful spending. We have 82 federal jobs programs, job training programs. Maybe we could survive by getting rid of 81 of them. You know, there's so much waste up here, and they won't be forced to do it until they're forced to do it.
All right. Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, appreciate your perspective.